I walk into my own house after a weekend fishing trip to find my bedroom completely empty. My daughter-in-law Brittany stands in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that smirk I've grown to despise. "It's our room now, Nigel. We needed the master suite." My son Jason avoids eye contact behind her. After 40 years of building this home with my late wife Margaret, after welcoming them in when they lost their apartment 6 months ago, this is my thanks. I smile calmly. Interesting timing, Brittany. The morning sun streaming through my kitchen window felt different that day, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. As I stood there, coffee mug in hand staring at the empty space where my bed used to be, my mind drifted back to how this all began. 6 months ago, Jason showed up at my door with Brittany and 2 suitcases. His face carried the weight of a man who'd lost more than just his job. "Dad, we need help," he'd said, and those 3 words were all it took. My son, my only child with Margaret, needed me. What father could turn away? "Of course you can stay," I'd told them that night. "This house is too big for just me anyway." Brittany's gratitude seemed genuine then. She hugged me with tears in her eyes, promising they'd be out as soon as Jason found new employment. 3 months tops, Nigel. We won't be a burden." The first month passed peacefully enough. Sure, I noticed small changes. My coffee mugs migrated from the lower cabinet, where Margaret had always kept them, to a higher shelf. "It's more efficient this way," Brittany explained, reorganizing my entire kitchen one afternoon, while I was at my weekly poker game. The spice rack I'd built by hand disappeared, replaced by some modern contraption that required reading instructions just to find the salt. By the second month, my living room had transformed into Brittany's personal yoga studio. My leather recliner, the one where Margaret used to curl up beside me to watch our shows, got shoved into the corner, like forgotten furniture at a garage sale. "You don't mind, do you?" Brittany asked, though she'd already rolled out her mat and started her sun salutations. "Exercise is so important for mental health during unemployment stress." The third month brought new rules I never agreed to. Brittany suggested I start eating dinner at 5:30 instead of 7. "Jason and I need couple time," she explained, as if I were a child requiring an early bedtime. "Marriage counselors say it's crucial for maintaining intimacy." I found myself taking my plate to the den, eating alone, while listening to their laughter echoing from my dining room. Month 4 introduced a new character to our drama. Linda, Brittany's mother, began appearing daily. She'd sweep in around 10 in the morning, criticizing everything from my choice of breakfast cereal to the way I folded dish towels. "No wonder this place needed a woman's touch," she'd mutter, refolding every towel in my linen closet. The day everything shifted, I was sorting through mail at my desk when a bank statement caught my eye. Not mine, but Jason's, carelessly left among my bills. My son, who claimed he could barely afford gas money, had received a $45,000 bonus from his new job 3 weeks prior. The same job he insisted paid barely above minimum wage. The same job preventing them from saving for an apartment. My hands trembled as I photocopied the statement. Margaret always said I trusted too easily, but this felt like swallowing broken glass. I slipped the original back among my papers, making sure it appeared untouched. That evening, I passed by the guest room, now Brittany and Jason's room, on my way to grab fresh towels. Their door stood ajar, and Brittany's voice carried clearly into the hallway. "Just a few more months, Amy," she said into her phone. I froze, recognizing her sister's name. "Once we establish residency for a full year, tenant rights kick in. The old man won't be able to kick us out easily." Her laugh chilled my blood. "Then we pressure him to sign over the deed or move to assisted living. Jason's too soft to see it, but his dad's getting up there. It's better for everyone if we handle his affairs." My stomach churned, but I forced myself to remain silent, memorizing every word. "The house alone is worth a fortune with the new development nearby," Brittany continued. "And you should see his financial statements. I found them last week. The man's sitting on millions he never mentions. Typical Depression-era hoarding mentality." I retreated to my bedroom, my sanctuary, and locked the door behind me. Pulling out my phone, I started recording every interaction, photographing every moved item, documenting every small theft of my life. The security system I'd installed after Margaret passed suddenly served a new purpose. I adjusted the cameras to capture more than just exterior threats. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed I'd shared with Margaret for 38 years, staring at her photo on the nightstand. "What would you do, honey?" I whispered to her smiling face. Almost as if she answered, I remembered her words from years ago. "Nigel, your kindness is your strength, but never let anyone mistake it for weakness." The next morning, I began my performance. I smiled at Brittany's reorganizing, nodded at Linda's criticisms, and retreated quietly when asked. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was just a foolish old man, too trusting and weak to protect himself. But wolves don't always howl before they hunt. Sometimes they wait silent in the shadows, gathering strength for the perfect moment to strike. And I'd learned from the best. Margaret might have been gone 2 years now, but her wisdom lived on. The game had begun, and my opponents didn't even know we were playing. People see what they want to see. Brittany looked at me and saw a doddering old contractor, someone who'd spent his life swinging hammers and laying foundation. She never asked about the certificates hidden in my office drawer or the law degree gathering dust behind family photos. Why would she? I drove the same Ford pickup I'd owned for 15 years and wore flannel shirts from the local hardware store. The truth was, something Brittany never bothered to investigate. For 35 years, I served as chief legal counsel for Steinberg Development Corporation, one of the largest firms on the East Coast. My construction background consisted of knowing enough about building codes to protect our company from lawsuits. The calloused hands she sneered at came from weekend woodworking, not daily labor. But assumptions are dangerous things, and I let her make them freely. Margaret's life insurance and my conservative investments had grown into a portfolio worth $3.2 million. Not fortune enough for magazine covers, but sufficient to live comfortably for 3 lifetimes. Brittany's snooping had revealed only what I'd allowed her to find: old statements from a decoy account I kept for household expenses. The morning after overhearing her phone call, I drove to a small office building downtown. Marcus Wheeler, private investigator, operated from a second-floor suite that smelled of coffee and old leather. We'd met years ago during a corporate espionage case, and I trusted him like family. "Nigel, good to see you." Marcus greeted me, his handshake firm, despite the gray creeping into his hair. Though something tells me this isn't a social call. I laid out everything: the financial deception, the overheard conversation, the gradual takeover of my home. Marcus listened, without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in a worn notebook. "I need to know who I'm dealing with," I concluded. "Everything about Brittany, her past, her patterns, her plans." Marcus nodded slowly. "Give me 72 hours. I'll have preliminary findings." While Marcus worked his magic, I conducted my own research. The county assessor's website showed my neighborhood's property values had skyrocketed. The house Margaret and I bought for $80,000 in 1985 now carried an estimated value of $850,000. 3 tech companies had moved headquarters nearby, transforming our quiet suburb into prime real estate. I spent hours in the library researching tenant law and elder abuse statutes. Brittany hadn't been wrong about residency rights, but she'd missed crucial details. The law protected tenants, yes, but not when fraud was involved, not when elder abuse could be proven, and definitely not when the property wasn't owned by an individual, but by a trust. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Found something. Can you meet?" Back in his office, Marcus spread photos and documents across his desk, like a dealer showing his hand. "Your daughter-in-law has quite a history. Brittany Marsh, formerly Brittany Coleman, age 34. Married Harold Coleman in 2014, divorced 2018. He pushed a photograph forward. A younger Brittany stood beside a well-dressed man in his 40s, both smiling at what appeared to be a charity gala. Harold Coleman, investment banker. Successful, recently divorced when they met. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus pulled out another document. Harold's father, Walter Coleman, lived with them for 2 years. Successful businessman, widower, worth about $4 million. My blood ran cold as Marcus continued. Within 6 months of moving in, Walter started showing signs of dementia. Brittany managed his care, convinced Harold that nursing homes were cruel. She took over Walter's finances to help out. Long story short, Walter ended up in a state-run facility after his assets mysteriously depleted. Brittany walked away from the divorce with a hefty settlement. "Can we prove this?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Already ahead of you. Harold Coleman lives in Boston now. Very willing to talk. He spent years feeling guilty about what happened to his father." The investigator handed me a phone number. "He's expecting your call." That evening, while Brittany and Linda rearranged my living room furniture yet again, I sat in my truck outside a coffee shop, phone pressed to my ear. "Mr. Donovan." Harold's voice carried exhaustion despite its professional tone. "I've been waiting for someone like you to call. I tried warning Jason when they got engaged, but Brittany had already poisoned that well." Harold's story mirrored my experience with eerie precision. The gradual takeover, the financial manipulation, the mother-in-law alliance. But one detail made my hands clench the steering wheel. "She drugged him," Harold said quietly. "Nothing dramatic, just sleep aids in his evening tea. Made him appear confused, forgetful. She documented everything, built a case for incompetence. I didn't realize until it was too late." After we hung up, I sat in silence, pieces clicking into place. The chamomile tea Brittany insisted on making me each night. My recent drowsiness, the foggy mornings that cleared only after I'd been awake for hours. The concerned looks she exchanged with Jason when I'd forget simple things. That night, I accepted the steaming mug with a grateful smile, then excused myself to use the bathroom. The tea went down the sink, replaced with water from the tap. I emerged, sipping carefully, making sure she saw me finish every drop. "Feeling tired, Nigel?" Brittany asked sweetly. "You've seemed a bit out of sorts lately." "Just the age catching up," I replied, adding a slight tremor to my voice. "Maybe I should see a doctor." Her eyes lit up like a predator, spotting wounded prey. "That's a wonderful idea. I know someone who specializes in geriatric care. Dr. Morrison. He's excellent with cognitive issues." I nodded absently, shuffling toward my bedroom with practiced unsteadiness. Behind the closed door, I dropped the act and opened my laptop. Dr. Morrison's online reviews painted an interesting picture. Several elderly patients had been declared incompetent under his care, their families taking control of substantial estates. One review, later deleted, but cached by Google, accused him of taking bribes. The web grew clearer with each thread I pulled. Brittany wasn't just an opportunist. She was a professional. But she'd made one crucial error. She'd hunted what she thought was weak prey, never realizing she'd walked into the den of someone who'd spent decades battling corporate sharks. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found the name I needed. Douglas, my younger brother, answered on the second ring. "Nigel, it's nearly midnight. Everything okay?" "Doug, remember when you said you owed me for helping with your business loan?" "Of course. I wouldn't have my restaurant chain without you. Why?" "I need to discuss transferring some assets into a trust. Can you meet me tomorrow early, before anyone else wakes up?" "Name the time and place." After hanging up, I opened my safe and pulled out documents I'd hoped never to need. The house deed, investment portfolios, bank statements, and most importantly, the trust papers Margaret and I had drawn up years ago, but never executed. We'd planned to protect our assets for Jason's future, never imagining we'd need protection from Jason's wife. I stared at Margaret's photo one more time before turning off the light. "The wolf is learning to hunt honey, just like you taught me." The next phase of my plan required patience, performance, and perfect timing. Brittany thought she was directing this show, but I'd spent decades in boardrooms where million-dollar deals hinged on reading people and staying 3 steps ahead. She wanted to play games with an old man's life. Fine. I'd show her how the game was really played. George Patterson and I had fished Lake Minnetonka together for 20 years. Every third weekend, like clockwork, we'd load up our gear and escape to his cabin for 2 days of bass fishing and bad jokes. So when I announced Thursday evening that we were heading out a week early, Brittany's eyes practically glowed with opportunity. "That's wonderful, Nigel," she cooed, refilling my decoy tea with extra enthusiasm. "You deserve a break. You've seemed so stressed lately." Jason looked up from his laptop, genuine concern crossing his features. "You sure you're up for it, Dad? The drive alone is 3 hours. George is picking me up," I assured him, adding a slight shake to my hands as I reached for my jacket. "His son thinks we shouldn't be driving long distances anymore." I caught the meaningful glance between Brittany and her mother. Linda had been lurking around more than usual measuring rooms and discussing paint colors when she thought I couldn't hear. The vultures were circling, ready to feast. Friday morning, George arrived right on schedule, playing his part perfectly. "Come on, old-timer," he boomed loud enough for the whole house to hear. "Fish aren't getting any younger, and neither are we." I shuffled out with my worn duffel bag, noting how Brittany watched from the window until we turned the corner. What she didn't know was that George dropped me at the Hampton Inn, 10 miles away, before continuing to the lake alone. "You sure about this?" George asked before driving off. "Seems like a lot of drama." "Trust me," I replied, checking into my room under a false name I'd used for corporate security tests. "Sometimes you need to let the snake fully emerge before you can cut off its head." I'd installed security cameras throughout my house months ago, supposedly for protection after a string of neighborhood break-ins. The app on my phone gave me perfect views of every room except the bathrooms. As I settled into my hotel bed, I pulled up the feeds and waited. Brittany wasted no time. By noon, a moving truck appeared in my driveway. 2 burly men emerged, and she directed them like a general commanding troops. My solid oak bedroom, set handcrafted by Margaret's father, disappeared piece by piece. The dresser, where I'd kept her jewelry, the nightstands we'd picked out for our 10th anniversary, even the rocking chair where she'd nursed Jason as a baby. Linda supervised from the doorway, already redecorating in her mind. I watched her point at the walls, probably planning where to hang her gaudy abstract art. Jason was conspicuously absent, his car gone since morning. The movers worked efficiently, transforming my sanctuary into an empty shell within 2 hours. Then came phase 2 of Brittany's plan. Another truck arrived, this one delivering a modern bedroom set that looked like it belonged in a boutique hotel. Chrome and glass replaced warm wood, stark whites erased the earth tones Margaret had chosen. By evening, they'd even changed the locks. I watched Brittany test the new keys, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. She stood in the doorway of what had been my room, hands on hips, surveying her conquest like a general claiming territory. The truly painful part came next. She entered my former sanctuary, carrying boxes of her belongings. I watched her carelessly toss her clothes into the closet where Margaret's wedding dress still hung in its preservation bag. She shoved the dress aside, making room for her collection of designer shoes. Saturday passed in similar fashion. They removed my presents from the master bedroom completely down to pulling up the small rug Margaret had hooked by hand. My books vanished from the shelves, replaced by Brittany's psychology texts and self-help manifestos. Every trace of the life I'd built with my wife erased like pencil marks under an eraser. Sunday morning, I had George call to say we were heading back early due to incoming storms. "Be there by noon," he announced over speakerphone, ensuring Brittany heard every word. I watched them scramble on my security feed. Linda departed quickly, leaving Brittany and Jason to put finishing touches on their theft. Jason had returned Saturday evening, and I'd observed several heated discussions between them, though the cameras couldn't pick up audio in every room. His body language suggested discomfort, but he'd clearly chosen his side. George dropped me at the corner at exactly 11:58. I walked slowly, letting my genuine exhaustion from 2 sleepless nights show. The truck was gone, the driveway empty, save for their cars. Everything appeared normal from the outside. I pushed open my front door, noting the familiar creak Brittany had complained about for months. The living room looked different, furniture rearranged once more. But I headed straight for the hallway leading to the bedrooms, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood. The master bedroom door stood open, like a mouth ready to swallow. I stopped in the threshold, taking in the complete transformation. Gone was any hint of the life Margaret and I had shared in this space. In its place sat a sterile showroom, all sharp edges and cold surfaces. Brittany materialized beside me, arms crossed over her designer blouse. That smirk, the one I'd grown to despise more with each passing day, spread across her face like spilled wine. Jason lurked behind her, unable to meet my eyes. "It's our room now, Nigel," she announced, voice dripping with false sweetness. "We needed the master suite." I stood perfectly still, letting the moment crystallize. This was it, the point of no return she'd crossed with such confidence. After 40 years of building memories in this home, after welcoming them in their time of need, after 6 months of gradual invasion, she'd finally shown her true intentions completely. I turned to face her, summoning the calm that had served me through hostile takeover attempts and courtroom battles. Her smile widened, mistaking my silence for defeat. She thought she'd won, that I'd shuffle off to the guest room like a beaten dog. "Interesting timing, Brittany," I said quietly, my voice carrying the weight of knowledge she couldn't yet fathom. Her smirk wavered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, we've been planning to ask you about it for weeks. You've seemed so tired lately. All those stairs must be hard on your knees. The guest room is much more suitable for someone your age." The lies flowed so easily from her lips. I nodded slowly, as if considering her words. Jason shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking up. "Dad, Brittany thinks it would be better." "It's fine, son," I interrupted, patting his shoulder. He flinched at my touch. "Change can be good for everyone." Brittany relaxed, victory gleaming in her eyes. She'd prepared for anger, for arguments, maybe even for tears. She hadn't prepared for acceptance. "We've already moved your things," she continued, emboldened by my apparent surrender. "Everything's set up in the guest room. We even got you a nice new mattress, better for your back." I glanced once more at the master bedroom, my gaze lingering on the spot where Margaret's rocking chair had sat. Then I turned and walked toward the kitchen, leaving them standing there. "Where are you going?" Brittany called after me. "To make some tea," I replied over my shoulder. "It's been a long drive." I heard her whisper urgently to Jason, probably instructing him to follow me, to make sure I wasn't too upset. He appeared in the kitchen doorway moments later, guilt etched in every line of his face. "Dad, I'm sorry about how this happened. Brittany thought—" "Your wife thinks many things," I said, filling the kettle with careful precision. "Tell me, Jason, do you ever wonder what else she's thinking? What other plans she might have?" He shifted nervously. "What do you mean?" I met his eyes for the first time since entering the house. "I mean that every action has consequences, son. Every choice we make, every line we cross leads somewhere. Your mother understood that. I'd hoped you learned it too." "Dad, it's just a bedroom." "Is it?" I asked softly. "Is that really all it is?" Before he could answer, Brittany appeared in the doorway. "Jason, honey, help me move the last few boxes." Her tone brooked no argument, and my son, my weak-willed son, followed her like a trained puppy. I stood alone in the kitchen Margaret had designed in the house where we'd raised our family, where we'd planned to grow old together. The kettle whistled, and I poured hot water over a tea bag, the normal routine maintaining my calm. Brittany thought she'd won a war with this bedroom conquest. She had no idea she'd simply fired the first shot in a battle she was destined to lose. I sipped my tea genuinely this time and smiled. The security footage of the theft was already backed up to 3 separate cloud services. The documentation of her deception grew thicker by the day. The trust papers Douglas had helped me execute made her victory meaningless. But she didn't need to know any of that. Not yet. Let her sleep in my bed in my room, surrounded by her chrome and glass and false triumph. Every general knows that sometimes you must retreat to win the war. And I'd been planning this war since the moment I heard her on that phone call, dreaming of stealing my life. The wolf was no longer silent. He was simply waiting for the perfect moment to show his teeth. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity. I'd slept surprisingly well on the lumpy guest bed, perhaps, because I knew the game was about to change. At 7 sharp, I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn for corporate negotiations, and slipped out, while Brittany and Jason still slept in my former bedroom. The law offices of Hendricks Meyer and Associates occupied the top floor of a building that had witnessed 30 years of my legal battles. Robert Hendricks himself met me at the elevator, his handshake firm, despite his 78 years. "Nigel, when you called yesterday, I cleared my entire morning," he said, leading me to his corner office. "Sounded serious." "More than you know, Robert." I spread out my documentation like a poker player, revealing a royal flush. Security footage, bank statements, Harold Coleman's affidavit, the private investigator's report, and most damning, the recording of Brittany discussing her plans with her sister. Robert's expression darkened with each piece of evidence. He'd known me since my early days at Steinberg Development, had golfed with Margaret, and me attended Jason's high school graduation. This wasn't just a legal consultation. It was personal. "The sleeping pills concern me most," he muttered, examining the toxicology report I'd commissioned on the tea leaves. "That elevates this from civil to criminal." "There's more," I said, producing the trust documents Douglas and I had signed. "The house hasn't been in my personal name for 2 weeks. It's held by the Donovan Family Trust with Douglas as co-trustee." Robert's eyes gleamed with professional appreciation. "Brilliant. Any tenant rights she thinks she's accumulated are meaningless. The trust can sell or transfer the property at will." "Already done." I handed him the final document. "Sold to my nephew Thomas for $1, with a buyback clause for the same amount whenever I choose to exercise it." "You've been busy," Robert chuckled, but his expression remained serious. "What's your endgame here, Nigel?" I leaned back in the leather chair, choosing my words carefully. "Justice, Robert. Not revenge, though the line might blur. This woman has done this before, will do it again, if not stopped. But there's also Jason to consider. He's still my son, however foolish he's been. What do you need from me?" "Criminal charges for the drugging and elder abuse. Civil action for theft and fraud. Restraining orders ready to file. I want everything prepared, but not filed until I give the word." Robert nodded, already making notes. "I'll have my team start immediately. We'll need official statements, but what you've provided is more than sufficient for charges. The district attorney owes me several favors." As I left Robert's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my investigator. "Urgent development. Can you meet?" I found him at our usual coffee shop, hunched over a laptop, with an expression that promised revelations. He spun the screen toward me without preamble. "Remember how Brittany's first husband mentioned she'd done this before I dug deeper?" The screen showed a social media group called Golden Harvest Strategies. It's a private forum where people share tactics for extracting wealth from elderly relatives. Brittany's a moderator under the username Brittany Knows Best. My stomach turned as I scrolled through posts. Detailed instructions on documenting false incompetence recommendations for compliant doctors, legal loopholes, state by state. Brittany had contributed a post titled, "The Long Game Establishing Residency for Maximum Return." "This is organized crime," I breathed. "Gets worse," Marcus continued. "She's currently grooming 3 other members for their own scores. A woman in Phoenix with her grandmother, another in Detroit targeting her father-in-law. She's building a network." "Download everything. Forward copies to Robert Hendricks." "Already done. But there's something else." Marcus pulled up another window. "Jason and Brittany have a son, Charlie, 3 years old. He's been living with Brittany's mother this entire time." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. A grandson I'd never met, never knew existed. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial theft could. "Linda's been raising him while they lived with you," Marcus explained. "According to neighbors, Brittany visits once a week at most. The kid barely knows his parents." I stared at a grainy photo of a small boy with Jason's eyes and my chin. Rage and sorrow warred in my chest, but I pushed both down. Emotions would come later. Now, I needed to think. Find out everything about this child. Medical records, daycare, everything. If Brittany's been neglecting him. On it, Marcus assured me. One more thing. That doctor she mentioned, Morrison. He lost his license in Pennsylvania 5 years ago for exactly what you'd expect. He's practicing here under a slightly different name, probably with forged credentials. The pieces kept falling into place, each more damning than the last. I drove home slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. The guest room window showed Brittany's car, gone probably shopping with my credit cards. Jason's car remained, meaning he'd taken another day off from his supposedly low-paying job. Inside, I found him in the living room staring at his laptop with unfocused eyes. He startled when I entered, quickly closing the screen. "Dad, I thought you had errands." "Finished early," I said, settling into what remained of my furniture. "Jason, we need to talk." His shoulders tensed. "If this is about the bedroom again..." "It's about Charlie." The color drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed, "How did you really think I wouldn't find out about my own grandson?" Jason crumbled head in his hands. "Brittany said we had to wait. That you wouldn't understand, that you'd try to take him away if you knew." "Why would I take him away?" "Because..." He looked up, tears streaming. "Because we're terrible parents. Because Brittany can barely stand to be around him. Because I'm too much of a coward to stand up to her." I moved to sit beside him, the father in me overriding the anger. "Tell me everything." The dam broke. Words poured out between sobs. How Brittany had gotten pregnant accidentally. How she'd wanted to terminate but her mother convinced her otherwise. How Charlie had been born premature, requiring expensive care that drained their savings. How Brittany blamed the child for ruining her figure, her career prospects, her life. "She said once we had your money we could hire full-time help," Jason confessed. "Maybe boarding school when he's older. She has it all planned out, Dad. Your money, your house, everything. And I went along with it because I don't know how to fight her." "And the $50,000 bonus." His eyes widened. "You know about that too." "I know about everything, son. The drugging, the online group, her history with Harold Coleman's father. Everything." Jason stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. "The tea." "Oh God, Dad, I'm so sorry. I told her it was wrong, but she said it was just to help you sleep better." "Stand up." I commanded, my voice carrying the authority I'd used in boardrooms. He obeyed instinctively. "You have two choices. Continue down this path with Brittany and face criminal charges alongside her, or remember who you are and act like the man your mother and I raised." "Criminal charges?" "Elder abuse, fraud, attempted poisoning. She's going to prison, Jason. The only question is whether you go with her." He swayed on his feet. "I can't. She'll take Charlie." "No," I said firmly. "She won't. But you need to decide right now which side you're on. Because tomorrow, I'm serving eviction papers from the new owner of this house. My attorney is filing criminal charges. The police will be involved. There's no middle ground here." Jason collapsed back onto the couch. "What do I do?" "First, you tell me where your loyalties lie. Then, if you choose correctly, we get you a lawyer and start documenting everything. You become a witness, not a defendant. And Charlie, we fight for him, together, the way family should." Hope flickered in his eyes for the first time in months. "You'd do that, after everything? You're my son. He's my grandson. Family protects family even when they've lost their way." I stood, straightening my suit. "But understand this, Jason. This is your last chance. Betray me again, and you'll face the consequences alone." "I understand," he whispered. "What do you need me to do?" "Pack a bag. Tonight, after Brittany goes to sleep, you leave. Come to the Hampton Inn on Route 12, room 214. Bring any documents you have access to, especially anything about Charlie. She'll know something's wrong if I leave. Tell her you're visiting a college friend. Make something up. You've been lying for her for months. Lie for yourself just once." Jason nodded, resolve hardening in his features. "I'll be there." That evening, I returned to find Brittany holding court in my living room, Linda beside her, both of them pointing at walls and discussing renovations. They'd spread fabric samples across my coffee table paint chips, fanned out like playing cards. "Nigel," Brittany chirped with false warmth. "We're planning some updates. This place has such potential, but it's stuck in the past." "How thoughtful," I murmured, shuffling past with practiced frailty. "Don't mind me." I heard Linda whisper, "He's getting worse. Maybe it's time for that doctor visit." "Soon," Brittany replied. "Very soon." In the guest room, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to Thomas. "Execute the transfer tomorrow at 9 a.m. Then, I called George. "Remember when you mentioned you were a character witness at that trial years ago? Sure, the embezzlement case. Why? Feel like doing it again. This time, it's not about money. It's about family. Name the time and place." One by one, I assembled my pieces on the board. Robert preparing legal documents. Marcus gathering evidence. Douglas ready with financial records. Thomas set to play new owner. George prepared to testify. And now, Jason the unexpected piece, switching sides at the 11th hour. I lay in the uncomfortable guest bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would begin the final act. Brittany thought she'd won by taking my bedroom, but she'd simply revealed her position. In chess, as in law, the key to victory often lies in letting your opponent think they're winning right until the moment you call checkmate. Margaret would have been proud. I'd learned patience from her strategy from the boardroom and justice from the law. Tomorrow, I'd use all three to protect what mattered most: my family, my home, and my grandson I'd yet to meet. The wolf had gathered his pack. Time to hunt. Tuesday morning brought revelations that shattered my carefully maintained composure. Jason had arrived at my hotel room at 2 a.m, haggard and clutching a manila folder like a life preserver. What he'd brought made my blood run cold and hot simultaneously. "I couldn't do it anymore, Dad," he'd said, spreading photos across the hotel desk. "Look at him. Look at your grandson." Charlie smiled up from dozens of pictures, a beautiful boy with the Donovan chin, and his grandmother Margaret's gentle eyes. But what struck me most was his setting in every photo: Linda's house, Linda's yard, Linda's arms, never his parents. "Brittany visits him once a week for an hour," Jason confessed. "She calls it maintaining appearances. I try to go more, but she monitors my time, says I'm being too soft." Among the papers Jason brought was Brittany's journal, which he'd photographed page by page. Her handwriting neat and precise, outlined not just plans for my house, but for Charlie's future. Once we secure Nigel's assets, one entry read, "Charlie goes to Pemberton Military Academy. Full-time boarding. Linda can visit him there. Out of sight, out of mind, out of our perfect life." My hands trembled as I read further. She'd researched boarding schools that accepted children as young as 5. She'd calculated how much of my money would cover 12 years of keeping her son at arm's length. She'd even drafted a letter explaining to friends how it was best for his development. "There's more," Jason said quietly, pulling up emails on his phone. "She's been corresponding with someone about adoption, a couple in California. Wealthy, desperate for a child. She hasn't told Linda yet." The hotel room spun. I gripped the desk edge, forcing myself to breathe. My grandson abandoned by his mother, used as a prop by his grandmother, and now potentially sold to strangers. Does Linda know about any of this? She thinks Brittany's just overwhelmed. Makes excuses constantly. Says once Brittany settles into the big house, she'll want Charlie with her. Jason laughed bitterly. Linda's almost as delusional as I've been. I picked up a photo of Charlie at what appeared to be his 3rd birthday party. No parents in sight, just Linda and some elderly neighbors. The boy's smile didn't quite reach his eyes, a loneliness I recognized too well. We're getting him out, I declared. Today. Dad, we can't just… We can and will. But first we need more information. I called Marcus, waking him without apology. I need you at Linda's house, discreetly. I want to know Charlie's routine, who watches him, everything. On it, he responded, instantly alert. Anything specific I'm looking for? Evidence of neglect or abandonment, and whether this custody arrangement is legal. While Marcus worked, I had Jason detail every instance of Brittany's rejection of Charlie. The time she'd refused to visit him when he had pneumonia. The birthday she'd missed for a spa weekend. The Christmas she'd spent with Jason in Vegas, while Charlie opened presents with only Linda. I'm a terrible father, Jason moaned. I let her convince me he was better off without us. You're here now, I said firmly. That's what matters. But we need legal standing. You're going to file for divorce and emergency custody today. His face paled. She'll destroy me. She's already destroyed you, son. Now we rebuild, starting with saving your child. Robert Hendricks answered my call on the first ring. Nigel, I was about to contact you. The criminal charges are ready to file. Add child endangerment and neglect. I'm sending you documentation now. Also, I need the best family lawyer you know. My son needs to file for divorce and custody immediately. Sarah Chen is the best in the state. I'll call her now. By noon, the pieces moved rapidly. Marcus reported that Charlie attended a small daycare 3 days a week, but spent most time with Linda or her elderly neighbor. No legal custody papers existed. Brittany had simply dumped him there, and Linda had accepted it. George, my fishing buddy and secret weapon, revealed his own credentials. I didn't mention it before Nigel, but I retired as a family court judge. Kept my license current. I can file emergency orders if needed. The universe seemed to conspire in our favor. Every professional I'd helped over the years stepped forward. The daycare director, whose business I'd advised pro bono, provided detailed records of Brittany's absence from Charlie's life. The pediatrician, an old golf partner, documented missed appointments, and Linda bringing Charlie alone. That afternoon, while Brittany shopped with my credit cards, I made a decision that would accelerate everything. I drove to Linda's house. She answered the door with Charlie on her hip, and my heart stopped. In person, the resemblance to Margaret was even stronger. The way he tilted his head, the curious eyes that seemed to see everything. Nigel. Linda's face cycled through confusion, fear, and defiance. What are you doing here? Meeting my grandson, I said simply. May I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house smelled of cinnamon and baby powder. Charlie watched me solemnly from Linda's arms. Does Brittany know you're here? Does Brittany know anything about this child beyond his expense? I countered. Linda's defenses crumbled. She sank onto a worn sofa, Charlie crawling to play with blocks nearby. I keep thinking she'll come around. She's my daughter. She has to love him eventually, right? How long have you been telling yourself that… Tears flowed freely down her weathered cheeks. Since the day he was born. She took one look at him and asked when she could leave the hospital. Said he ruined her body, her life, everything. I knelt beside Charlie, who offered me a red block with grave seriousness. Thank you, I told him, accepting the gift. He smiled, and Margaret's smile crossed generations to warm my heart. Linda, I need you to understand something. Brittany is planning to send him away permanently, boarding school or worse. She wouldn't. I showed her the journal entries Jason had photographed. Watched the color drain from her face as she read her daughter's cold calculations about Charlie's disposal. Dear God, she whispered, I've been such a fool. You've been a grandmother trying to hold a family together, I corrected gently. But now, we need to act. Jason is filing for divorce and custody. I'm filing criminal charges against Brittany. You'll need to choose a side. Linda looked at Charlie, then back at me. There's no choice. He comes first. Then help us. Document everything. When did she last visit? When did she last call? What excuses does she make? For the next hour, Linda provided devastating testimony against her own daughter. 3 visits in 2 months. No phone calls on Charlie's birthday. Refusal to buy him winter clothes, forcing Linda to use her Social Security money. She gives me $200 a month for his expenses, Linda admitted. Says it's all she can afford. But I see her shopping bags her new jewelry. Charlie toddled over, raising his arms to me. I lifted him, and he settled against my chest, with trusting ease. This child starved for affection, accepted love wherever he found it. "Grandpa," he said experimentally. "That's right," I whispered, my voice thick. "I'm your grandpa." Linda watched us with wet eyes. "He needs you. Needs a real family." "He has one. We just need to remove the obstacles." My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Transfer complete. You are no longer the owner of record for the house." Perfect timing. I handed Charlie back to Linda. "Pack his things. Everything. Jason will be here tonight to pick him up. Brittany will go insane. Brittany is about to have bigger problems than custody arrangements." I left Linda's house with my heart simultaneously broken and soaring. Broken for the years, lost soaring for the future salvaged. Charlie would know his family, his heritage, his grandfather who'd fought to claim him. That evening, I returned to find my house in chaos. Brittany stood in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, shrieking at some customer service representative about declined credit cards. Shopping bags lay scattered, receipts, spilling like accusations. "This is impossible," she screamed. "Try them again." She spotted me and hung up. "Nigel, there's something wrong with the credit cards. They're all being declined." "How strange," I mused, shuffling past with false frailty. "Perhaps you've exceeded the limits." "That's impossible. Your limits are—" She caught herself, but too late. I smiled sadly. "Yes, Brittany. I know exactly what my limits are. Or were before I canceled them all this morning." "You can't do that. We have expenses." "Then perhaps Jason's salary can cover them. The one from the job that barely pays anything. Or was it the job with the $50,000 bonus? I forget which story we're using today." Her face went white, then red. "You senile old fool. You can't manage your own finances. That's why we're helping you." "Like you helped Harold Coleman's father?" I asked quietly. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. She recovered quickly, mask sliding back into place. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're confused, Nigel. This is exactly why we're concerned. These paranoid delusions." "Save it for the police," I said, heading for the guest room. "They'll be very interested in your delusions, especially the ones you've been putting in my tea." I closed the door on her sputtering protests, hearing her immediately call Jason. His phone would go straight to voicemail. By now, he was at his mother-in-law's, loading his son's life into garbage bags and reclaiming fatherhood. Through the thin walls, I heard Brittany's rage escalate. Furniture crashed, glass shattered. Let her tantrum. Every broken item was evidence. Every screamed threat another nail in her coffin. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo Jason had sent. Charlie secured in a car seat, clutching a stuffed elephant and heading toward safety. My grandson no longer abandoned, but rescued. Tomorrow would bring the storm. Eviction notices, criminal charges. Brittany's carefully constructed world crumbling like wet sand. But tonight, a little boy would sleep, knowing his father chose him. His grandfather fought for him, and his future no longer included being discarded like an inconvenient truth. The wolf had found what mattered most. Not the house, not the money, not even revenge. Family. The rest was just tactics to reach the real treasure, a 3-year-old boy who deserved love more than his mother's schemes. Wednesday evening arrived with the kind of tension that precedes summer storms. I'd orchestrated everything for this moment, each piece positioned perfectly on the board. The dining room table, dressed in Margaret's best china, bore a feast I'd personally prepared. Roasted chicken with herbs from her garden, the potatoes Jason loved as a child, and the apple pie that had won me Margaret's heart 43 years ago. Family dinner. I'd announced that morning, my voice carrying just enough shakiness to seem vulnerable. We need to talk about the future. All of us. Brittany had been on edge all day. The declined credit cards, my comments about the Jason's mysterious absence the previous night, all of it had her pacing like a caged predator. But the promise of discussing the future had hooked her completely. "Finally coming to your senses," she'd muttered, though loud enough for me to hear. "Linda be here at 6. This is it." What she didn't know was that my guest list extended beyond her expectations. Douglas arrived first, my younger brother, looking distinguished in his navy suit. He hugged me tightly at the door. "You sure about this, Nigel?" "Never been more certain of anything since I asked Margaret to marry me." Thomas came next, my nephew carrying himself with the quiet confidence of youth. As the new legal owner of the house, his presence would be crucial. Then George, my fishing buddy, and retired judge, his judicial bearing intact, despite his casual attire. Robert Hendricks entered with his briefcase, every inch the corporate lawyer who'd protected my interests for 3 decades. Behind him, a woman I didn't recognize, but whose sharp eyes missed nothing. "Sarah Chen," she introduced herself. "Jason's divorce attorney. He said you'd explain my presence when the time was right." I seated them all in the living room, out of sight from the dining area. 20 minutes, I told them. "When you hear me mention Margaret's china, that's your cue." Brittany arrived precisely at 6, Linda trailing behind, like a reluctant shadow. They'd dressed for victory, Brittany, in a designer dress that probably cost more than Linda's monthly Social Security check, Linda in her Sunday best. Neither noticed the extra cars parked down the street. "Where's Jason?" Brittany demanded immediately. "Running an errand," I said, leading them to the dining room. "He'll be here soon. Please sit." I served them myself, playing the dutiful host, while my hands trembled with carefully practiced weakness. Brittany watched me like a hawk, presumably calculating how much longer she'd have to endure this charade. "The house is lovely," Linda offered nervously, filling the silence. "You've maintained it beautifully." "Margaret would accept nothing less," I replied, pouring water from her crystal pitcher. "She chose every piece in this room, including this china. Her grandmother's pattern passed down through generations." That was the cue. The living room door opened, and my assembled witnesses filed in. Brittany's fork clattered against her plate. "What is this?" she hissed, half rising from her chair. "Sit down, Brittany." I commanded, my voice suddenly steady and strong. The confused old man vanished like morning mist, replaced by the corporate attorney who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals. "We have business to discuss." Douglas took position by the window. Thomas stood near the door. George settled into Margaret's chair with judicial gravity. Robert placed his briefcase on the sideboard with practiced precision. "I don't understand," Linda whispered, shrinking into her seat. "Then, let me explain," I said, remaining standing. 6 months ago, I welcomed my son and his wife into my home during their time of need. I opened my doors, my heart, and my trust. In return, I received deception, theft, and attempted poisoning. "That's ridiculous," Brittany sputtered. "You're having another episode. This is exactly what we've been worried about." I pulled out my phone and hit play. Brittany's voice filled the room. "Just a few more months, Amy. Once we establish residency for a full year, tenant rights kick in. The old man won't be able to kick us out easily. Then, we pressure him to sign over the deed or move to assisted living." The color drained from her face. That's taken out of context? Is this out of context too?" I played another recording, this time of her discussing the sleeping medication with someone named Dr. Morrison. Just enough to make him confused. Document everything. We need a clear pattern of cognitive decline. "Stop," she whispered. "I'm just getting started." I nodded to Robert, who opened his briefcase with theatrical flair. "Mrs. Donovan." Robert began formally. "You're being charged with elder abuse, fraud, theft, and attempted poisoning. The district attorney has issued a warrant for your arrest, which will be executed tonight." Additionally, Thomas stepped forward. As the legal owner of this property, purchased from the Donovan Family Trust 2 days ago, I'm serving you with immediate eviction. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and leave. Brittany's mask finally shattered completely. You can't do this. We have rights. We're tenants. You were guests. George interjected, his judge's voice carrying absolute authority. Guests who abused hospitality and committed crimes. Your presumed tenant rights are nullified by criminal activity and fraud. Where's Jason? She screamed, spinning toward the door. Jason! As if summoned, my son appeared. But he wasn't alone. In his arms, Charlie watched the scene with wide, curious eyes. Behind them stood 2 police officers' badges gleaming under Margaret's chandelier. Hello, Brittany, Jason said quietly. Charlie and I have been at Mom's grave. I told him about his grandmother, the one who would have loved him, unlike his mother who wanted to sell him to strangers in California. The room erupted. Brittany lunged toward Jason, screaming about kidnapping, about her rights, about conspiracies against her. The officers moved smoothly, professionally, restraining her as they recited those famous rights she'd researched so carefully for others, but never imagined hearing herself. Linda sobbed in her chair, whether for her daughter or herself, unclear. Sarah Chen approached her with unexpected gentleness. Mrs. Morrison, we need to discuss your grandson's custody. You've been his primary caregiver, and the court will want to ensure his best interests. What's happening? Charlie asked, his small voice cutting through the chaos. I moved to Jason's side, placing a protective hand on both their shoulders. Just some grown-up problems, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. Grandpa, Charlie said, recognizing me from our meeting at Linda's house. The words seemed to break something in Brittany. You turned my son against me, she shrieked as the officers guided her toward the door. You poisoned Jason's mind. This is all your fault, you manipulative old bastard. No, Brittany, I said calmly. I simply let you reveal who you really are. Every lie, every scheme, every cruel word about your own child, you chose those. I just made sure there were consequences. She spat more venom as they led her out, promises of lawsuits and revenge echoing until the door closed. The silence that followed felt holy, like the moment after a fever breaks. Linda looked up at me through tear-swollen eyes. I didn't know about Charlie, about any of it. I thought I was helping. You were protecting your grandson the only way you knew how, I assured her. That's what family does. Real family. Douglas approached with a document. The trust is ready to sell the house back to you whenever you're ready, Nigel. $1, as agreed. Tomorrow, I decided. Tonight, I want to have dinner with my family, my real family. The lawyers and officers departed, tasks complete. George squeezed my shoulder before leaving. Reminded me why I loved being a judge, he said. Sometimes justice actually wins. As the house emptied of strangers and chaos, those who remained gravitated toward the dining room. Jason settled Charlie into a high chair that had apparently materialized from Linda's car. The boy examined the apple pie with serious concentration. I'm sorry, Dad, Jason said for the 100th time. For everything. Apologies are done, I declared. Now we rebuild. Starting with getting this young man some pie. Margaret's recipe, Charlie. Your grandmother's special pie. Linda hovered uncertainly by the door. Should I do you want me to go? Sit, I commanded gently. You're Charlie's grandmother too. He needs all the family he can get. Just remember where your loyalties lie. She nodded, taking her seat with trembling hands. Brittany's going to prison, isn't she? Most likely, Sarah Chen confirmed, having stayed to discuss custody arrangements. The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple victims documented fraud, the poisoning attempt. She'll be gone for several years minimum. Good, Linda said firmly, surprising everyone. She needs help I can't give her. Maybe prison will finally make her face what she's become. We ate in relative quiet. The storm passed, but its echoes remaining. Charlie charmed everyone by carefully feeding pie to his stuffed elephant, declaring it Gamma's pie, with toddler certainty. Jason watched his son with wonder, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "We'll need to find our own place," Jason said eventually. "I can't impose on you anymore." "The basement apartment," I suggested. "It needs renovation, but it could work temporarily. Keep Charlie close to family while you both heal." "You'd do that after everything?" "You came back," I said simply. "You chose your son over her. That's all that matters now." As the evening wound down, I found myself in Margaret's kitchen with Linda, both of us washing dishes in companionable silence. She broke it first. I should have seen it. What she was becoming. Maybe I could have stopped it earlier. "We see what we want to see," I replied, remembering my own blindness those first months. "The important thing is acting once we can't deny the truth anymore." "Your wife raised a good man," Linda said softly. "Despite everything, Jason's got a good heart." Margaret always said people show their true character in crisis. Jason showed his tonight. Through the window, I watched my son push Charlie on the old swing set, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The same swing where Jason had played, where Margaret had dreamed of grandchildren, where life had come full circle, despite the darkness between. "What happens now?" Linda asked. "Now we heal," I said. "We teach Charlie about love without conditions. We help Jason remember who he is without her shadow. We rebuild what she tried to destroy." And Brittany made her choices. Now she lives with them. But Charlie will know he has a family who fought for him. That's what matters. Later, after everyone had gone, and the house settled into familiar quiet, I stood in my reclaimed bedroom. Tomorrow, workers would move my furniture back from whatever storage unit Brittany had used. Tonight, I spread a sleeping bag on the floor, unwilling to wait another day to sleep in the room where Margaret and I had shared our lives. I pulled out my phone one last time, checking the security footage. Brittany's arrest captured in clear digital clarity. Evidence for the trials to come, but also proof that sometimes the wolf does win. Sometimes patience and planning triumph over arrogance and greed. "We did it, honey," I whispered to Margaret's photo. "We saved them both." The wolf had shown his teeth. The hunt was over. Now came the harder task, teaching the pack to live in peace. 6 months later, autumn painted our neighborhood in shades of gold and crimson. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching Charlie chase leaves across the backyard, while Jason raked them into piles, just to see his son's joy in scattering them again. The same yard where Jason had played 30 years ago now echoed with his son's laughter. The basement apartment renovation had been completed in record time. Nothing fancy, just a comfortable space where father and son could build their relationship without the shadow of Brittany's influence. They ate dinner with me most nights, though I insisted they maintain their own routines and independence. Healing required both closeness and space. The trials had been swift and decisive. Brittany accepted a plea deal, rather than face a jury trial where her journal entries and recorded confessions would be read aloud. 7 years in state prison with possibility of parole in 5. The online group she'd helped moderate scattered like roaches when light hit them, though Robert assured me the FBI had taken interest in their interstate fraud activities. Dr. Morrison, the complicit physician, lost his medical license permanently and faced his own criminal charges. 3 elderly victims from other states came forward, their families grateful someone had finally stopped him. But justice was only part of our story. The real victory came in smaller moments. Like the morning Charlie ran to me, instead of away when he skinned his knee. Like Jason enrolling in therapy and confronting the weakness that had let him enable Brittany's cruelty. Like Linda, volunteering at the senior center, teaching crafts to residents, and warning them about scams targeting the elderly. Grandpa. Charlie's voice pulled me from my reverie. He burst through the door, cheeks red from cold and excitement. "Daddy says we can make pie." "Margaret's apple pie." I asked, already knowing the answer. We'd made it together every week since that night, the ritual becoming sacred. "Gamma's pie," he confirmed, bouncing on his toes. Jason followed, carrying the last bag of leaves. He'd gained healthy weight, lost the haunted look that had shadowed him during Brittany's reign. His company had promoted him twice, recognizing the talent that emerged once he stopped hiding behind his wife's manipulations. "Dad, I've been thinking," he said, helping Charlie wash his hands at the sink, "about Thanksgiving." "What about it?" "I'd like to invite Linda. I know it might be awkward, but Charlie loves her, and she's been going to those meetings for families of inmates. She's trying." I considered this while gathering ingredients. Linda visited Charlie twice a week, always respectful of boundaries, always grateful for inclusion. She'd testified honestly during Brittany's trial, her words helping secure the conviction even as they broke her heart. "Family is complicated," I finally said. "But yes, she should come. Charlie needs all the love he can get." Jason's relief was palpable. "Thanks, Dad. I know it's a lot to ask." "Your mother would have done the same," I said. Margaret believed in redemption and giving people chances to change. Linda's proven she chooses Charlie over Brittany. That's enough. We spent the afternoon baking Charlie standing on a stool between us, carefully placing apple slices in patterns he declared were art. His concentration reminded me so much of Margaret that my chest tightened with bittersweet joy. "Tell me about Gamma," Charlie requested as he did every pie-making day. Well, I began the familiar warmth of memory wrapping around us. "Your grandmother Margaret had the most beautiful smile, just like yours, and she loved to bake." Jason added his own memory stories Charlie absorbed like a sponge. We were building him a history, a foundation of love to stand against whatever questions might come about his mother. That evening, after Charlie was asleep, Jason and I sat on the back porch, despite the chill. The stars were brilliant, unmarred by clouds. "I got a letter," he said quietly, "from Brittany." I waited knowing he'd share when ready. "She wants me to bring Charlie to visit. Says she's found religion, that she's changed." He laughed bitterly. "Same manipulation, different wrapper." "What will you do?" "Nothing. Sarah Chen says I don't have to allow any contact until Charlie's older and can decide for himself. Maybe when he's 18, if he wants to know her, I'll support that. But not now. Not when he's finally feeling secure." "That's wisdom," I agreed. "Protecting him isn't punishment for her. It's love for him." "I still have nightmares sometimes," Jason admitted, "about how close I came to losing him. To losing you. If you hadn't fought back." "But I did. We did. That's what matters." A comfortable silence settled between us until Jason spoke again. "I've been thinking about starting a support group for people trapped in relationships like mine. Men especially, since we're often too ashamed to ask for help. Your mother would be proud. Think you'd come share your perspective. Try to keep me away." The next month, I attended Jason's first meeting. 12 people showed up, each carrying stories of manipulation and control. Jason spoke with quiet authority about recognizing abuse, about choosing children over toxic partners, about the strength found in vulnerability. I shared the warning signs I'd missed, the investigation techniques that revealed truth, the importance of trusting instinct over gaslighting. Marcus, my private investigator, became a regular speaker, teaching people how to document abuse safely. Sarah Chen offered pro bono consultations. Even George contributed, explaining legal protections available to those trying to escape. Linda came too bravely, sharing her perspective as someone who'd enabled her daughter's behavior through denial. Her words reached people in ways ours couldn't, the pain of a mother accepting her child's evil carrying unique power. The group grew. 20 people. 40. Eventually we moved to the community center, then split into multiple meetings across the city. Jason found his calling in helping others escape what he'd survived. Charlie thrived in this environment of honesty and growth. At 4, he understood only that some people made bad choices and hurt others, but that his family would always protect him. He called me Grandpa Jason Daddy and Linda Nana. Simple titles carrying profound meaning for those who'd fought to earn them. One evening, as I tucked Charlie into bed during one of their dinner visits, He asked the question I'd been dreading. "Where's my mommy?" I sat on his bed, choosing words carefully. "Your mommy made some bad choices and had to go away to learn how to make better ones." "Like timeout." "Yes, like a very long timeout for grown-ups." He considered this with 4-year-old seriousness. "Will she come back?" "Maybe someday. But right now, you have Daddy, and me, and Nana, who love you very much. And Gamma in heaven." "Yes, and Grandma Margaret watching over you always." This satisfied him, and he snuggled into his pillow. "Love you, Grandpa." "Love you too, little wolf." As I descended the stairs, I found Jason waiting, tears on his cheeks. He'd heard every word. "You handled that perfectly," he whispered. "We'll handle whatever comes," I assured him. "Together." The house that had nearly been stolen now sheltered healing. The bedroom Brittany had claimed became mine again, though I'd changed nothing except the locks. Margaret's presence remained in every corner, her wisdom guiding our rebuilt family. I established the Margaret Donovan Foundation, with a significant portion of my assets focusing on elderly protection and supporting families escaping abusive relationships. The first grant went to expanding Jason's support groups statewide. The second funded legal aid for elder abuse victims. The third created Charlie's Place, a daycare center for children displaced by family violence. Harold Coleman, Brittany's first victim's son, joined our board of directors. His father, Walter, now recovered and living independently, became our most powerful spokesman. At 82, Walter toured senior centers, warning about predatory family members, his story saving countless others from similar fates. My own story spread too, sometimes uncomfortable with the attention, but recognizing its necessity. Local news covered the case, then national outlets. The Wolf of Willowbrook. One headline called me, and the name stuck. I received hundreds of letters from elderly people facing similar situations. Each one answered personally with resources and encouragement. But fame meant nothing compared to ordinary Tuesday mornings. Charlie at the breakfast table, syrup on his chin, chattering about preschool. Jason reviewing legal briefs for Sarah Chen, having found purpose in helping other custody cases. Linda, arriving with groceries humming while she helped me preserve Margaret's garden for winter. This was victory, not in courtrooms or headlines, but in the daily choice to build, rather than tear down, to trust, rather than suspect, to love, rather than fear. On the first anniversary of what we called the night everything changed, we held a celebration, not of Brittany's arrest, but of our family's rebirth. The dining room table groaned under Margaret's china, laden with everyone's favorite dishes. Douglas and his family, Thomas, with his new fiancé George, and his poker buddies Robert Hendricks, and his wife Sarah Chen, and her partner Marcus, and his team, even Harold and Walter Coleman, flew in from Boston. As I stood to give the toast, looking at the faces around my table, I thought about the journey from that horrible moment of finding my bedroom stolen to this moment of abundance. Margaret always said that family isn't just blood. I began raising my glass. It's the people who show up when darkness falls, who stand with you against those who would do harm, who help you rebuild when everything seems lost. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. We've all faced betrayal. We've all known the confusion of loving someone who proves unworthy of that love. But we're here because we chose hope over bitterness, justice over revenge, and most importantly, love over fear. To Margaret, George called out, who raised men worth saving. To second chances, Linda added quietly, and the courage to take them. To Grandpa Wolf, Charlie piped up, making everyone laugh. The best grandpa ever. We toasted and drank the clink of glasses, a symphony of survival. Later, as guests mingled and Charlie played with other children from the support group, Jason found me on the back porch. Think Mom would approve, he asked, of how we've handled everything. I looked through the window at our assembled family blood, and chosen all carrying scars, but choosing joy. She'd say we took the long way around, but we got where we needed to go. I miss her. Every day. But she's here in how we treat each other, in how we're raising Charlie, in every person we help escape what you escaped. Jason hugged me, then the kind of embrace men too often deny themselves. Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad. Never crossed my mind, I lied gently. Because some truths serve no purpose, while others build foundations for tomorrow. As our guests departed and night settled over the house, I performed my evening ritual. Checking locks, setting alarms, reviewing security footage. Old habits from dark days, now simply prudent precautions. The wolf might be at peace, but he never forgot how to bare his teeth. Charlie had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from playing. Jason carried him downstairs while I cleaned up, humming Margaret's favorite song. Linda dried dishes beside me, our movements synchronized by months of practice. "Nigel," she said suddenly, "I need you to know something." I waded hands in soapy water. "I've started writing to Brittany. Not about Charlie or any of you. Just mother things. Trying to understand where I went wrong. Hoping maybe someday she'll want to change." "That's your right," I said carefully. "Just remember what's at stake if she manipulates you again." "I know. That's why I have Marcus review every letter incoming and outgoing. I won't risk Charlie's safety for my need to believe my daughter can change." It was more wisdom than I'd credited her with. "Then I support you. Everyone deserves someone who believes in their possibility of redemption, even if they never achieve it." She smiled sadly. "Margaret was a wise woman choosing you. I was the lucky one." After Linda left, and the house grew quiet, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, our bedroom, Margaret's and mine. The furniture was back in its proper place, the rocking chair by the window, where she'd nursed Jason. But now, it also held memories of Charlie falling asleep in my arms, of stories told, and songs sung to a new generation. I opened the drawer where I kept her letters, adding today's events to the journal I'd started. Someday, Charlie would read these words, understand the full story of how his family fought for him before he could fight for himself. The last entry I wrote that night was simple. "My dearest Margaret, today our grandson called me Grandpa Wolf in front of everyone. The name that started as recognition of necessary fierceness has become something else. A term of endearment, a promise of protection, a legacy of love. The woman who tried to steal our life is gone, paying for her crimes. The son we raised has found his strength. The grandson we never met knows he is cherished. The family you always believed in has grown beyond our walls to include so many others. The wolf has finished his hunt. Now he tends his pack, teaches the young guards against new threats. But mostly, he remembers the woman who taught him that true strength lies not in bared teeth, but in knowing when to show them. Rest easy, my love. Your boys are safe. Your legacy lives on. And somewhere, I believe you're smiling that smile that captured my heart so many years ago. Until we meet again, your devoted Nigel." I closed the journal and placed it back in the drawer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others escape the traps that nearly caught us. But tonight, peace reigned in the house that love built greed, tried to steal, and justice reclaimed. The grandfather wolf settled into his den content, in the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving freely, and teaching others that no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes to those who refuse to surrender. Charlie's laughter would fill these halls for years to come. Jason would grow into the man Margaret always saw in him. Linda would find her own redemption in choosing her grandson over her daughter. And I would stand guard over them, all the wolf who learned that the greatest victory isn't in the hunt, but in what you choose to protect. Is there someone in your life who tried to take advantage of your kindness, thinking it was weakness? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family justice and the triumph of patient wisdom over hasty greed. Share this with anyone who needs to remember that true strength sometimes means waiting for the perfect moment to show it. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you always have the courage to protect what matters most, and the wisdom to know that family isn't just blood, but the people who stand with you when the wolves circle. Until next time, remember, kindness isn't weakness, and the quietest person in the room might just be the most dangerous when crossed.